To optimize the G11 for product photography, you're going to want to use the program mode. You're going to need to know how to turn the flash off, how to set the ISO, how to set custom white balance, how to set your timer, how to use the Flexi Zone autofocus point. You may need to set the macro mode, and you might want to try bracketing. Let's start with the mode dial. Make sure the mode dial is set to P. This stands for program, and this will give you control over all the settings you need. For product photography, you want to have a lighting setup. You don't want to use the flash, so make sure the flash is turned off. Press the flash button right here, and move over using your control dial to flash off. Press set or give it a second to go away. Because you're not using the flash, depending on how bright your lights are, you may or may not need to increase the ISO. If you're doing this outdoors in the shade, then you're probably okay with having an ISO set to 80. Even if you just have a couple of 100-watt light bulbs, your ISO at 80 should still be just fine. Make sure you set the ISO to 80 by changing the ISO using the ISO dial right here underneath the mode dial. Turn this either direction until you get to 80. 80 ISO will help keep the image as clean as possible. If the color of your product is very important, then you may want to set a custom white balance. If it's not so important, you can go ahead and set a preset white balance. Press the function button to access the function menu. White balance is the first function at the top, and at the bottom you have the preset options. If you're using tungsten, go ahead and set this to tungsten. If you're using fluorescent lights, go ahead and set this to fluorescent. However, for the most accurate color possible, you're going to want to choose custom white balance. There are two custom white balance options, custom 1 and custom 2. Basically, you can set one for one lighting environment and the other for another lighting environment. Let's go ahead and set up custom white balance number 1. As you can see in the screen, you have these brackets, and up here it says press menu to evaluate the white balance. Basically what you want to do is place a plain white sheet of paper in your lighting environment in front of your product. In my case, my backdrop is neutral gray, so I can actually point the brackets at the backdrop and white balance off of that. You don't necessarily have to white balance off of a white piece of paper. In fact, most professional photography stores will have a gray card or a disc you can put on your camera in order to properly white balance. But because both of those options cost more money than I'm willing to spend, I'll just go ahead and white balance off the backdrop. So I'll place the brackets on the backdrop and press the menu button right here. And what this does is neutralize or desaturate any color the camera sees within these brackets. So now my gray backdrop should be completely gray. Press function to escape the function menu. If the subject is closer than 2 feet to the camera, then you may need to turn on the macro mode. The macro mode is right here with the flower icon or the left navigation button. Press that and the macro mode is activated. With the macro mode activated, what you don't want to do is zoom into your subject. You won't be able to fill up as much of the frame with the subject when you do this. What you want to do is zoom back all the way and actually step closer in order to fill as much of the frame as possible with the subject. Finally, you probably want to use a tripod with these pictures, which means you won't be able to easily move the camera to focus on the subject and then recompose the image before taking the picture. So what you can do is adjust the autofocus point to anywhere else on your screen. In order to do so, just press the focusing button right here. It's the one with the 5 dots on it. The focusing square will turn yellow, and now what you can do is either press the up, down, left, and right navigation buttons, or you can use the control dial to jump to pre-selected points on the screen. If I use my navigation buttons, you can see that I can move the square anywhere I want. If I need to focus on something very small, I can press the display button, as it indicates here, to make the focusing square even smaller. In my case, I don't need to do this, so I'll press it again to enlarge the focusing square back to its standard size. Once the focusing square is where you want it to be, you can press the focusing button to go back. When you're done with your pictures and you want to recenter the focusing square, just go ahead and hold down the focusing button. Now, because you're using a tripod, you set up the focusing square where you want it to be. The next thing you'll have to do is set the timer mode. Press the down navigation button and choose the 2-second timer. The 2-second timer is very nice in this situation because what it allows you to do is press the shutter button and release the camera, giving it those 2 seconds to stop shaking before the picture is taken. Now you're pretty much ready to take your picture. The focusing square is set up, your 2-second timer is set, you have your white balance properly customized, your ISO is set to 80, and the macro mode is activated. Depending on the depth of field you want in your picture, you might need to shift the program settings. What that means is simply press the star button or the auto exposure lock button right up here. The camera locks the exposure. Now you can use your control dial to change these settings. If, let's say, f2.8 is too wide of an aperture and you want to get the entire product in focus, just go ahead and change this to f8. Now my shutter speed is 1/5 of a second, but that's okay because I'm using a tripod. Once everything has been set up, go ahead and press the shutter button halfway, focus on your subject, and then press the shutter button the rest of the way to start the countdown. You might want to experiment with bracketing in this scene because it might help with your exposure. Press the function button to access the function menu. Go down to the bracketing option and move over to the auto exposure bracketing. Go ahead and press display to set this. Now what's going to happen is the camera will take 3 pictures. The first picture will be underexposed by 1 stop. The second picture will be at 0 or balanced exposure. And then the third picture will be overexposed by 1 stop. You can change this by using your controller dial if you want to have it just 1/3 of a stop difference, or you can have a more extreme difference by choosing -2 and +2. Once you have this set, go ahead and press the function button to escape. Now your bracketing is set up. I'm going to go ahead and press my shutter button halfway, focus on my target, and then press the shutter button the rest of the way to start the countdown. As you can see, 3 pictures were taken one after the next.